Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your source materials, dig in, and pull out the knowledge you need nice and fast. Today, we're exploring something, well, kind of fascinating culturally. It's the surprising depth and sheer breadth of chart success for musicians within the Latter-day Saint community.
Yeah, when you look through the sources, the range is almost jarring, isn't it? We're talking about artists from the same faith background. You've got, like, global pop idols from the 60s. And then fast forward to today, you have these contemporary classical crossover acts. And they didn't just find success.
Yeah, they really dominate in very different genres, too.
Exactly.
And it's more than just, a list of successful people. It hints at something strategic, maybe even like a blueprint for reaching different markets. The main idea we're tracking here is just how consistent and far-reaching their influence has been. We're seeing dozens of gold records, multiple #1 albums across both niche charts and the big mainstream ones. But the real angle, I think, the insight maybe, is how a defined cultural identity might have been leveraged to launch into such diverse musical spaces.
So our mission today is really to connect those dots. They seem kind of random at first glance, bubblegum pop here, instrumental music there. We want to see if there's some common thread, maybe business-wise or culturally, that explains how they could go from ruling the Hot 100 in the 70s to topping classical crossover charts today.
Right. Let's dive in then. And you really have to start at the beginning with the group that basically defined mainstream possibility for this community. The Osmonds. They built an absolute machine.
You really do have to start there. And their origin story, it matters because it explains some of the discipline you see later on. The original four brothers, Alan, Merrill, Jay, Wayne, they didn't start as rock stars in the late 50s. They were a barbershop quartet. Very polished, very disciplined.
Yeah, the clean-cut image.
Exactly. And getting spots at Disneyland, then becoming regulars on the Andy Williams Show through the 60s, that gave them huge national exposure. It cemented that family-friendly brand early on.
And that brand became the launch pad for that really dynamic shift in the early 70s, didn't it?
Absolutely.
Younger brother Donnie joins the group. He's just a kid. And bam, the whole thing pivots hard into pop, into rock and roll.
Yeah.
Suddenly, they weren't just the variety show act anymore. Donnie becomes this global teen heartthrob. It was a massive marketing push centered on him.
And that pivot, it worked like clockwork, just incredibly efficient. The Osmond Brothers, the group, hit #1 in 71 with One Bad Apple.
Okay.
But then look at Donnie's solo stuff that same year. Sweet and Innocent goes top 10, #7. And then Go Away, Little Girl.
Yeah.
Straight to #1. It just launched him. Absolutely stratosphere.
And the production numbers you mentioned, they really back that up. It wasn't just success. It was like an industry churning out hits. The sources say Donnie got 6 gold records in 1971 alone.
6 in 1 year?
The next year, 1972, 8 gold records. Then 4 more in 73.
It's incredible volume.
It really demonstrates this powerful, relentless operation behind him, marketing, recording, especially when you remember he was just a teenager.
And this is where you immediately see the breadth of their reach starting to show. While Donnie's owning the pop charts, Sister Marie carves out her own space. Completely different genre.
Country, right.
Yeah. 1973, she's only 13 years old, and Paper Roses hits #1 on the Billboard country chart.
Wow.
13, it proves right away their appeal wasn't just that teen pop formula. They had the, let's call it organizational ability, to market successfully across different genre lines. They capitalized on that core family brand.
But maybe the best example of their strategic thinking, or at least Donnie's, comes way later, decades later.
You mean the comeback?
Yeah, the 1989 resurgence, Soldier of Love, goes all the way to #2 on the Billboard Hot 100. And that brings up an interesting point, thinking about strategy. That song's sound was, well, it was dark, synthy, very late 80s rock. A total world away from Puppy Love.
Oh, completely different.
So was that shift accepted by his original, maybe more conservative, faith-based audience? Or did he have to pivot entirely, find a completely new secular audience to pull off that comeback?
It really suggests the second option, doesn't it? To get back onto the Hot 100 like that, especially in that era. Artists often had to fully embrace the current secular trends. That comeback is key because it shows a willingness to adapt commercially, to pivot, regardless of the original wholesome image.
Yeah.
And when you zoom out on Donnie's career, the numbers are just huge. 18 albums charted on Billboard, 32 songs, including his 60th album, believe it or not, The Soundtrack of My Life, back in 2015. They really were the blueprint for mass appeal.
Okay, so that incredible run is tied to mainstream pop culture.
Yeah.
But the next strategic phase we see in the sources, it kind of moves away from those huge stadiums and into a much more focused, faith-based genre market. How did the next generation adapt? How did they shift from trying to dominate the Hot 100 to aiming for, say, the contemporary Christian charts?
Right, that's a really interesting shift, and that's where someone like Hillary Weeks comes into the picture. Her success represents a totally different strategy, not mass appeal, but targeted niche domination. She actually made Billboard history in 2011. She was the first Latter-day Saint musician ever to hit the top 10 on Billboard's Christian albums chart. That was with her album Every Step. And that's a significant barrier to break, because succeeding on that specific chart, well, it requires getting into a whole different distribution network, different retail channels.
And her charting really shows that niche saturation you're talking about. Every Step didn't just chart Christian, it landed on 5 different Billboard charts at once.
5, wow.
Yeah, including hitting #1 on the top new artists indie chart and #6 on the top current contemporary Christian chart. So she was effectively playing in parallel markets, indie and Christian, and maximizing her presence in both.
And she kept it going. Consistency was part of it too. 2 years later, her next album, Say Love, debuted at #9 on the contemporary Christian Billboard charts.
So sustained success in that niche.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating here, and it kind of connects her success back to that community base we talked about, is her own perspective on it. There's a quote in the source material where she says something like, "The most important word is Christian. It has only been in the last 2 years that I've been able to say that I charted on Billboard, but I've always been able to declare I am a Christian."
Huh. That really grounds the achievement, doesn't it? It ties the commercial success directly back to the core identity, which presumably is the very audience driving those Christian album sales for her in the first place. That dedicated, reliable base. Maybe that's the secret sauce for getting that initial chart entry.
Absolutely. I think that's a key insight. Okay, so let's pivot again. We've gone from pop to Christian. Now let's move into the modern era, where success often looks different. It's driven by digital reach, maybe stunning visuals, especially in instrumental and classical crossover music.
Right. And here we're talking about groups like the Piano Guys and Jean Tarai. These are acts that dominate very specialized charts, but they also achieve massive global recognition, often using high production videos and performances perfect for, YouTube and streaming.
Let's take the Piano Guys first. You've probably seen their videos. It's 4 Latter-day Saint dads, Stephen Sharp Nelson on cello, John Schmidt on piano, Al Vanderbeek handles music and production, Paul Anderson does video.
The ones who play in amazing locations.
Exactly. Oh. They built their entire brand on these classical pop mashups, but performed in visually spectacular settings. Think grand piano on a cliff edge, cello in the jungle. So they're selling not just the music, but this whole uplifting cinematic experience. And they're reaching a huge global audience, primarily through platforms like YouTube first.
And the chart results show that strategy works incredibly well for their niche. It's staggering consistency. Their first 4 major label albums, The Piano Guys 2, A Family Christmas, and Wonders, every single one of them hit #1.
#1.
On 2 separate, highly specialized Billboard charts. New Age albums and classical albums. Both. Every time.
Hitting both simultaneously like that, that's really telling. It shows they're successfully bridging that gap, between the traditional classical audience and the broader instrumental, maybe ambient or new age music market.
Yeah.
And that success propelled them onto huge stages. They performed at Carnegie Hall. They described it as intimidating, humbling, inspiring, unbelievable, unforgettable. And Paul Anderson, the video guy, actually attributed their success partly to faith, saying something about relying on Heavenly Father to make up the difference. It connects that digital strategy right back to chart victories.
So if the Piano Guys kind of defined that instrumental crossover space, then Jean Tarai came along and did something similar for vocal crossover.
Right, the Gentleman Trio.
Casey Elliott, Brad Robbins, and Bradley Quinn Lever, all tenors. They met doing Les Miserables in Utah, apparently, and they've really perfected this sound they call cinematic pop.
Which is a great description. When we talk about classical crossover as a genre, Jean Tarai is pretty much the definition. You take these powerful operatic-style voices, that emotional depth, but you apply it to modern orchestral arrangements, sometimes pop song structures. The result is music that just sounds epic, soaring.
And their debut EP showed right away that the formula had commercial legs.
Immediately.
It spent 10 straight weeks in the top 10 on both the classical and classical crossover Billboard charts, including 3 weeks sitting at #2 on both.
That kind of staying power, 10 weeks right out of the gate. That's a huge signal. It shows real, sustained demand in that specialized market.
And they even manage a pretty rare feat, crossing over with a holiday track.
Oh, yeah.
Their Christmas album, Merry Christmas, had this really interesting mashup, What Child Is This?, blended with I Wonder as I Wander. And that specific track, that single, actually hit #1 on Billboard's main hot single chart, which is super competitive.
Wow. Okay. So that's jumping from the niche album charts like classical crossover straight into the mainstream singles market. That's impressive.
Yeah, and their strategy seems to continue with their more recent work, like the Rise album. It mixes original songs with covers of artists like Billy Joel. So they're proving you can find real commercial success, blending that powerful, almost classical vocal sound with production aimed at a modern, maybe even digital-first audience. Okay, so we've traced this path. 4 pretty distinct phases of chart success over 50 years across, 4 very different genres: pop, country, Christian, classical, new age, crossover. What does this whole history, this compiled story from the sources, what does it all mean for you, the listener, trying to understand this pattern?
Well, I think the big takeaway, the overarching insight maybe, is that this collective success across decades and genres, it demonstrates an unusually high level of, let's say, organizational capacity and strategic consistency within this particular cultural group. Yeah. Whether you're talking about the sort of machine-like discipline the Osmonds needed to sustain that crazy output in the 70s, or you jump ahead to the high-production video strategy, the piano guys needed to dominate modern digital charts.
Yeah.
There's a pattern. The pattern isn't really in one genre. It's in the consistency, the dedication, and maybe the strategic use of an existing, reliable, highly organized audience base to launch from.
It really is an almost paradoxical snapshot of the music industry when you lay it all out. You have artists from this one specific faith community who've managed to rule the totally secular Billboard Hot 100 at one point, then dominate the very niche contemporary Christian charts, and then also top the sort of high art classical crossover charts.
Right.
We looked at, 18 charted albums for just one artist, Donny Osmond, 4 albums in a row hitting #1 across 2 niche categories for the piano guys, barrier-breaking entries into specialized markets like Christian music for Hillary Weeks.
And just think about the sheer range of charts we even talked about today. The Hot 100, country albums, classical crossover, new age albums, top new artists indie, contemporary Christian. It's incredibly diverse.
Yeah.
Which really raises a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. When a specific community, like this faith community, provides such a consistent, dedicated, built-in audience base from the start, does having that initial market certainty, knowing you can likely sell some records to that core group, does that actually free these artists later on? Does it give them the security to experiment more boldly, to jump into completely unrelated non-faith genre?
Interesting.
Knowing they already have that foundation, that safety net to sell records back home, so to speak. Is that part of the reason for the genre hopping success? That's something worth considering next time you look at how music markets get segmented and how artists navigate them.